Hey everybody, this is Hondo Carpenter from Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. It's time now to talk to my buddy. This guy is one of my favorite people in the media room. Every time I see him, I smile. He is one of the most genuine, warm people you'll ever meet. He's terrific at his job. He's the founder of La Nacion, which is Spanish for the nation. You can find him on Twitch, Instagrams, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere. He writes writes and does work for the Review Journal, for Raider Nation Radio. He's a fill-in host for the Raiders.com. This guy is the Spanish voice of the broadcast through Lotus in Los Angeles. He's anywhere and everywhere. We should just call him Mr. Raider, the one and only, the great, and my buddy, Harry Ruiz. Hi, Harry. How are you, friend?
Doing fantastic, Hondo. I gotta hire you to be my hype man and just bring you everywhere and introduce have you introduce myself everywhere. But no, Mr. Raider's already taken by somebody else. I'll just take Harry.
Okay, but you
Harry's
are one
good.
of the best, and I genuinely really respect you. You're so good at what you do. Now, the first thing I'm going to ask you is as a complete. I mean, I do not have any other than maybe some old El Paso mild sauce on my tacos at lunch. There's no part of me that's Spanish. I love listening to your broadcasts because you talk so fast. I don't know how anybody in the world can understand Spanish because you talk so fast, but it's so exciting listening to you. How much do you enjoy doing the play-by-play?
Oh man, it's amazing. It's a dream come true. Like when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a sports broadcaster. I would watch TV and say, I want to be like those guys. But then growing up, I'm also a realist. I was like, there's only X amount of TV stations and each one has X amount of sports broadcasters. It's not going to happen. So I went to school for another thing. I had a business when I was 18 years old, and then Destiny just took me to a radio station, and then folks from that radio station liked me a lot, so they got me a casting with a TV station, and then that was when I was 18. Right now I'm 34, so 16 years later, here I am living my dream, broadcasting Raider games, and it's crazy because I grew up a Raider fan. I am a Raider fan, so it's ridiculous that I end up calling the NFL games for my favorite team.
It's really cool. It's I love to watch it when people prosper and their dreams come true, and I think it's cool, especially when they're my friend like you. So congratulations, buddy. To
Gracias.
talk about the Raiders offseason. You're a Raider fan. I'm not. I moved out here to cover the team. Matt Millen is one of my best friends, so I certainly have a lot of respect for the organization. I like the organization. I had a chance a couple of times to meet Al Davis because of Matt Millen. So I certainly don't hate them. And but I didn't grow up a fan of them. I'm just being truthful. So you and I have a couple of different perspectives. Maybe, maybe not. I want to get into that. I want to talk about the state of the Raiders. I know that fans, Raider Nation hate the Patriots. I get that. I understand that. They don't dislike them. They utterly hate them. So that automatically hurts a Josh McDaniels and a Dave Ziegler, not because of anything they done. Then they look at Josh McDaniels' track record when he was with Denver, and they don't like him anymore because on top of being a Patriot, he was a Denver Bronco. I understand that, but I need you and I for this discussion to set the fans aside. We're not discrediting them because without them, you and I don't have jobs. But I want to get into a realist. The point is, people around the NFL that I trust and respect hold huge favor on Dave Ziegler and a lot on Josh McDaniels as well. They like them. I see why fans are frustrated. Mark Davis said it's not a rebuild, and they're coming off a 10-win team that was the fourth seed in the AFC playoffs, and they didn't have a great year. I see all of that, Harry. But at the end of the day, I don't understand the vitriol. Like it or not, Dave Ziegler's their GM and Josh McDaniels their coach. So if this is your team, you can be disappointed, but you see a lot of disappointment for the last 20 years they're putting on these two men after one. And add to it the Denver connection, the Patriot connection. I just don't see after one season the vitriol. It doesn't make sense to me. Do you understand it?
I mean, I say it every time I'm on Raider Nation radio. It's hard to ask the Raider Nation for patience. It's been
Hmm.
20 years since the last time this franchise has won a game in the playoffs. It's been even longer since the last time they've won a Super Bowl, double that. So it's difficult to ask them for patience. So when they are coming off of a playoff season where they close the season real strong to be able to avoid having a losing record and then having a double digit win record, making it to the playoffs, they feel like the team is there. But the thing is, Mark Davis, the front office, they don't want to just be a team that can make it to the playoffs. They want a team that wins the Super Bowl. Mark Davis, he's the hungriest out of everybody in the Raider Nation to be able to bring that fourth Vince Lombardi trophy to Raiders headquarters in Henderson, to take it to Allegiant Stadium, to have a parade on the strip and be able to do things and say, there you go, there's my first one, let's bring more. He wants a team that's fighting in a constant manner. So what did he do? Did he want to just patch up the things like they had to do them in 2021 with all those bad situations that happened, the Jon Gruden emails, the Henry Ruggs tragedy, Damon Arnett flashing guns on social media, all that wasn't in the plans for the Raiders, and
Right.
they patched everything up and they were able to make it to the playoffs. Did Rich Bisaccia do a great job? Absolutely. Did the players love Rich Bisaccia? Absolutely. But he was a great guy at just telling everybody to do their job, to not get in their way. And he wasn't seen as that head coach of the future. And what the Raiders want is that head coach of the present and the future. And they saw that in Josh McDaniels, which every player I've spoken to that has been with him before, I spoke with a couple of Patriots players in the Pro Bowl after the 2021 season, and they were like telling me, "You guys got a hell of a coach. He's been fantastic. He's one of the smartest guys I've been around. He's made me a lot of money in the NFL." With all he has done. And then you talk to people that know Dave Ziegler that say that there's nobody in the NFL with more connections than Dave Ziegler, that he could pick up a phone and talk with anybody around the league to make a deal done, and that he's a very smart guy that went through the ringer and he went all the way to the top of the food chain right now in the NFL and is where he is as a GM of the Las Vegas Raiders, one of the most iconic franchises. That's what I see being me and having the connections that I have. And it's different to when I was only a fan and I was looking from afar. The fans, I understand their sentiment, I understand their frustration, but at the same time, we have to be conscious and be like, hey, this isn't going to happen overnight. One season, they came in, they didn't have a first or a second round pick. Their first
Mm-mm.
pick came late in the third round, and that third rounder ended up starting every single game last season. Now, can you imagine what they can do with, what is it, Hondo? 4 top 100 picks in the 2023 draft. It's hard to ask for patience. I understand the Raider Nation, but we have to take steps forward, and that's what I think they're doing. The current front office and the current coaching staff. Hondo, I always say this. What was it? 5 double-digit leads that they ended up giving up last year. Change those to wins. Or also, how many were blowout wins? Saints, Chiefs, previous years, how many blowout losses? How many blowout losses did they have in the past where they just got whooped and were uncompetitive going into halftime? This Raiders team, yes, it was frustrating, but at the same time, it's like I see more promise for them in the future than with previous teams.
You know what's funny is you didn't say one thing I disagree with. There's things that you wonder, like, okay, that doesn't make sense. But overall, I love the direction this team's going. I get it. That's why I said I'm not discounting fans in the least bit. I don't have a job without them. But to me, when you take all the vitriol of 20 years and dump it on the two guys, that's what I didn't get. I would think they would be more angry at the organization than just those two. I want to go back and I want to defend Mark Davis on something. I know if you look at what I've done over the last 5 years, you could find things to be critical about. Probably this not in your career because you're Mr. Perfect, but other than you, Harry Ruiz, I don't know anybody else in the media that I can look at and say they've done nothing wrong in the last 5 years. You can point out the things that Mark could have done differently. But let's look at the guy. He did everything he could to keep this team in California. He didn't want them in Las Vegas, but California didn't want them. I mean, let's make that really clear. That's not, I understand. He kept the prices of tickets low. Now, you're going to instantly get fans going crazy. It's not his fault that they sold out and people are selling them on the secondary market. That's not Mark Davis's fault. Yes, the Raiders have the most expensive tickets. That's not on him. He gets a stadium built, which his dad couldn't get done. He gets the team moved with the blessings of the NFL. No lawsuits. His dad didn't get that done. Now the Raiders are flushed with cash. Anyone saying the Raiders don't have money now just don't like the Raiders and are making stuff up because it's just not truthful. He gives Jon Gruden a 10-year deal. Nobody does that. Why? Because he wants stability. He wants Gruden to build something. He doesn't want to go to the playoffs every third year. He wants to go every year. Obviously, it doesn't work out with John. Then he goes, he brings in, he knew not firing Rich Bisaccia was going to make a lot of players mad. But he felt, I've got to build something here long term. I don't think Rich can do it. Whether he's right or wrong, we don't know, but that's what he thought. He stuck to his convictions. He gets a general manager and a coach that most of the NFL would have taken. And he brings them in with 6-year deals. He makes it clear to us in the media, hey, during year one, in the midst of a tough time, these guys are coming back. My point is this. I know fans are mad at Mark Davis. I think you can pick at some things he done and have some fair criticism. But that guy as an owner isn't coaching. He's not evaluating free agents and trades. And when you look at all that he's done, you do have to at least give him credit for what he's done over these last 5 years with the Raiders. Am I wrong, Harry?
Not at all. And you look at Jon Gruden, when he hired Gruden, how many teams had been courting Gruden to come back to the NFL while he was the analyst on Monday Night Football? Nobody was able to do it except Mark Davis. He gave him a huge deal. He was bringing him over to Las Vegas. It was the big splash that offseason. And of course, they pretty much started the team from zero, cutting all bad contracts and having a lot of dead money and going from being a pretty much from a playoff team in 16 to struggling with Del Rio in 17 to 18, struggling even worse to 19, getting better and just collapsing towards the end of the season. And every season it was a step forward. Now with Josh McDaniels, that's what you hope happens. That 2022 season, 6 wins. That was better than Gruden's first year of his second go around with the Raiders. Hope they keep building on that. And now it's going to be the way that they want to do it. And they're hoping that they can draft the right players just like they did with New England. But Mark Davis, look at what he did with the Aces. He bought the franchise. He had the cornerstone player with Aja Wilson. He paid for other players. He brought in the star coach, Becky Hammond. What happened with the Raiders? They brought in the star head coach with Jon Gruden. He brought in the star coach with Josh McDaniels, who a lot of teams wanted him, but he only interviewed with the Raiders because that's the job that he wanted. Now the thing is, you got to make the things work. It's completely different building a team in the WNBA than building a team in the NFL, but you got to give them time and give them the opportunity to do so. If you keep firing coaches that like some fans want after 1 year or after 2 years, then it's just going to be the same old everything that they've done in the past, where they let go of coaches and then you got to start all over and bring in another culture and bringing other ways to do things. So Mark Davis, he gave Jon Gruden an opportunity, and we all know why it ended. That's not Mark Davis's fault. Now it's Josh McDaniels' era with the Raiders. He is with his I want to say buddy, friend, BFF, however you want to say it, a guy that he has known since college in Dave Ziegler. And it's their time to bring the Raiders back to prominence. And heck, Max Crosby, he was one of the players that spoke the most about Rich Bisaccia, about how he wanted him back. And he said great things about him. Now you talk to Max Crosby about Josh McDaniels. What did he say? Positive things over positive things from Coach McDaniels, because he has that worth ethic that the coaches and the front office want. So if everybody has that mentality like Max Crosby has out there, they can succeed.
All right, last question for me, but I think it's an important one. I still think the Raiders are a year away from being competitive for to make any kind of a move in the playoffs. I still think they're probably 2 years away from being a Super Bowl contender, but I see how it's coming together. Again, not saying I don't have questions about some things, but taking a bird's eye view, I see that. Do you agree with my assessment?
I think 2023 they can surprise people. They can shock some folks. and then go into 2024 with people already having their eye on the Raiders. But 2023, I would understand why people would underestimate the silver and black. But at the same time, they're bringing in players that they want. They're bringing in players. Now they have their first full draft as a front office and as a coaching staff. So they're able to go and scout players that are going to be first rounders and be like, hey, we're going to end up with one of these guys. And heck, they're going to have the number 7 pick. They can end up, if 4 quarterbacks go in the first 6 picks, that means that the Raiders are going to end up with the opportunity to pick one of the top 3 defensive players in this draft. So they can bring in impact players immediately to this team, and let's see how that works. To be honest, if they're able to get, they had Dylan Parham late in the 3rd round. Now they have 4 picks before that Dylan Parham pick from last year. If they can hit on 3 of those 4 picks, that can change the team immediately. If it's offensive line, if it's defensive line, if it's cornerback, that can change this team very, very quick. And I don't think they're Super Bowl contenders for 2023, but I think they can end up finding their way into the playoffs and do the same thing they did in 2021, where they almost shocked the Cincinnati Bengals on the road. And if you get a win in the playoffs, that changes the whole story. You just need to go round by round.
Harry, a couple more things because we hit on it, and so I'll just go ahead and talk about
Of
it.
course.
I don't think they get enough credit for the Dylan Parham pick. I think that was a great pick. That's a guy that a lot of people had top of the 2nd round value wise. He dropped a little bit because sometimes between the end of the season and the draft, teams are overly analytical. This is not how the Raiders do it now. I think that they're not getting the credit they deserve for their drafting last year because they didn't have a 1st or 2nd rounder. But man, Dylan Parham sure was a winner.
Oh, absolutely. And every time we speak with him and that you have the
Great guy.
opportunity, he's a great guy, super smart kid, always gives props to everybody around him. He speaks very highly of another draft pick, the Raiders' 7th round draft pick, and Thayer Mumford, who could
Yep.
also be somebody that this team develops, who had playing time out there during, while some of his teammates had injuries, but also was a key piece when they brought out that jumbo package with that extra lineman. He was also out there helping. And look, the Raiders, they didn't end up as a top 10 team in sacks allowed. They ended up blocking great for the leading rusher in the NFL. So the offensive line, a lot of folks spoke that it was going to be trouble once the year started. And for times it was, but as the season advanced, you saw a little bit more stability with that unit. So let's see if Dylan Parham and Thayer Mumford can become an even bigger factor in 2023. And then 2024 take over as some stalwarts like Colton Miller is in the left tackle, that you see these 2 guys and be like, hey, you know what? There are guys. Now you also would love to see some playing time for those defensive tackles they drafted, because in 2022 they didn't see a lot of playing time and they were inactive for a lot of games. So we talk about those hits they had. We also got to talk at times about those strikeouts because they weren't very productive because they weren't getting playing time.
Let's talk about the Jimmy Garoppolo signing. I'm going to tell you what I think of it. If he stays healthy, I think it was a home run. I think it was a great one. If he doesn't, then I think you have a right to say, listen, the guy's track record has been injury. So why do you do it? But again, if he's healthy, I think this was a smart addition by the Raiders, but that's a big hit because of his history with injury. Your thoughts on Garoppolo?
When I saw the signing, I was like, all right, it makes sense. It's Jimmy
Yeah.
G. It's somebody that knows the system. It's somebody that has been with Josh McDaniels, that knows Dave Ziegler. It makes sense. But then when I saw the contract, the numbers, I was like, this is a home run for the Raiders.
Very favorable deal for the Raiders.
Exactly, because you would see reports in the weeks before free agency started, and they were saying he wants 30 million, he wants 35 million. And you're like, for a guy that hasn't played a full season since 2019, when he took the Niners to the Super Bowl, I don't know. But then you saw those numbers, and you're like, you know what? It's a favorable contract for the Raiders, and that's something that we're seeing, Hondo, with other players. You look at the Jacoby Myers deal compared to Christian Kirk last year. Heck, compare it to Hunter Renfrow, the one that Raiders signed last year, that extension they signed. That was a grand slam, and a lot of folks say that Jacoby Myers was the best available wide receiver in free agency this year, and the Raiders got him for 11 million a year. So that's a home run, a slam dunk, whatever you want to call it. And then you look at the contract with Jimmy G, and it's like, hey, they're taking less money that they could possibly make with other teams, but they want to be here. And what was something that happened with the Patriots? Look at the contracts that Tom Brady would sign. He was never the top of the market. And that was despite him being at the top of the food chain with all the guys in the quarterback club. So they're following that, and now it's time to deliver. And Jimmy G, when he's healthy, he knows how to command this offense. He knows how to play in this offense. So let's see if he's able to also be somebody that other players learn from, that are able to feed off of him and understand this offense a little bit better. Because there were times where you would see players in last year that they weren't taking it very well at the beginning, and they needed time to understand it.
I thought it was funny when I tweeted out that the Raiders got a really good deal for Jimmy. Oh my God, I took so much vitriol on Twitter. But the point of the matter is, Derek's not here and he's not coming back. So if you look at it, taking Derek out of the picture in today's market, they did get a great deal for Jimmy Garoppolo. You're absolutely right. I think
And
that's
look
one
at the
thing.
numbers that Derek signed for. What was it? 4 years, 150. I'm like, the Raiders got a huge deal with Jimmy G. And maybe
And when
he's not leaps and bounds better than Derek Carr. And a lot of folks say it's a lateral move. I'm like, well, it's a lateral move that costs way less money than Derek Carr would have cost.
it's a lateral move with a much smaller paycheck.
Yeah.
And one thing I think we're going to see with Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels that at times you haven't seen over the last 20 plus years of Raider football, they're not going to do dumb contracts. They're going to be willing to let people go. And one of the things that's constantly hurt the Raiders going back to when Al was alive is sometimes it was just dumb contracts. And these guys are going to show a lot of fiscal restraint. I think that's a big reason for Raider fans. I know that not all of them, but I know a lot of them don't want to hear reasons to be optimistic. But the point is, you and I's job is to tell the truth. And there's a lot of optimism, and there are some negatives, but there's a lot more optimism than negativity around this team right now. I understand why fans don't see it, but it's our job to see it, and it's there.
Absolutely. And even going over to the Darren Waller situation, which wasn't very popular in the Raider Nation. I'm a huge Darren Waller fan. Heck, going into the locker room, we're told you can't talk to players that weren't full participants at practice. Darren Waller was on the IR, and he would talk with us. He wouldn't have any issues with speaking with us, and always was a straight shooter and said the truth and said things the way it was. And seeing him go, it's like, okay, that's a big weapon that the Raiders let go. And a lot of fans are disappointed that they were only able to get a third round draft pick. But in 2020, after his huge season, nobody denied that he was a top 3 tight end. After 2021, Hondo, I think a lot of us were like, okay, he right now with those injuries and his availability, I think he's a top 5 tight end. Then you go to last year, and it's like, availability again gets into question. Is he still a top 5 tight end? You make those questions, and it's not because he's a popular player that you want him on your team. You want him on your team because he can produce, because he can be there every Sunday. So the Raiders made that call and was like, okay, we're going to let him go. We're going to get a third round draft pick, and we're pretty much going to pay Jacoby Myers salary with what we're letting him go. So by letting him go. So that's the Raiders. They're playing it smart. And yes, it hurts to see him go, but at the same time, they're not playing with their heart in their hand. They're playing with the smarts, with their brain, and be like, okay, what's better for us? If we bring in an OJ Howard, whoever we bring in as a tight end 1, is he going to produce pretty much the same, or are we able to get all that yardage bringing in Jacoby Myers, having Hunter Renfrow available, having Devontae Adams available? Maybe you don't need that big name tight end when you have those 3 wide receivers that I just mentioned.
Harry, it's always great to talk to you. We're going to do this again if you will, before the season starts. But I really appreciate your time. I like the fact you and I think a lot on the same pages. I like the fact that you are a Raider fan, but you are a realist. I think if anybody takes anything away from this podcast, there's a lot of reasons if you're a Raider to be excited. And there are some people that just like to be unhappy. I get that. I understand it. But I'm not carrying the water for the Raiders. I don't get paid by the Raiders. Matter of fact, my bosses don't care if I'm pro or anti-Raider. They just want me to report. But the point of the matter is there's a lot to be excited about if you're a Raider. I think this organization's going in the right direction. They're fixing a lot of mistakes. And I think it's going to be fun that you and I get a front row seat for it all next year, huh?
Absolutely, absolutely. And look, I would always say, well, social media for starters, it gives voice to a lot of folks that just love throwing stuff at the wall and see what sticks and saying negative stuff. And heck, you saw when Jimmy G didn't show up to that press conference that we waited for 2.5 hours for. I saw bloggers on YouTube. Oh, he failed his physical. He's not going to be a Raider. No this, no that. And I'm like,
When
guys,
people
you guys,
said that, wait. People actually said that like it was factual.
yeah, they were saying it on some YouTube channels, and I'm not going to mention who it was. And I'm like, guys, that's irresponsible. Like, you can't be just saying stuff because you have a platform. You have to be responsible with what you say. And then I look at Twitter, and heck, I posted a video on my Instagram of Jimmy Garoppolo entering the press conference and giving his open statement on my Instagram page. It has 100,000 views already. The cool thing, it has 100,000 views. The bad thing is that there's a lot of people just talking smack and saying negative stuff. And I'm like, all right, if you don't follow me, I'm going to block you and delete that comment. I don't like seeing negative stuff on my page. But it's like, sometimes it's cool that some folks have that voice. Sometimes it's like, guys, you can't be irresponsible. Just go and see. Look, what I would do as a fan, sometimes I would go to the Oakland Alameda Coliseum and the team had 2 wins. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go have a blast at the tailgate, have a great time, go into the stadium, and then just root for my team, cheer, lose my voice, win, lose, or tie. I'm a Raider fan, and I'm gonna go back to the parking lot after the game and just have more drinks and enjoy my friends and enjoy my family out there with the Raider Nation. And fortunately, in my opinion, this team has a better possibility of taking a step forward than a step backwards, in my opinion. So hopefully, by the end of the season, we're talking about the Raiders having a winning record and making it to the playoffs. And if not, look, all those Raider fans that are complaining, they're still going to be wearing silver and black next year, and they're still going to be putting comments on your articles on Sports Illustrated and on Facebook. So they'll be back, but hopefully it's for a positive reason, and we can turn it around.
Harry, anytime I get to spend time with you is a good time. You're just one of the good guys in our business. I'm proud to call you a colleague, and I'm really proud to call you a friend. Thanks for joining me, buddy.
Gracias, amigo. Gracias, Hando.
One of the great ones from La Nacion in Spanish. Sorry, my Spanish is not real good. Raider Nation Radio, Raiders.com, Review Journal, the great one, Harry Ruiz. He also does the broadcasts in Spanish of the games. One of the good guys in the media.